15. Night enshrouded Knaak, and with its coming also returned the demon Zazax to Augustus Malevolent. The general had been waiting most anxiously for the past hour, pacing back and forth inside his tent. He had dismissed all of his officers and ordered that even his guards depart from the vicinity of his quarters. As an added precaution, he also not permitted any tents within hearing distance. What transpired between Malevolent and the Mantis would be for their ears alone. Even Galena had been forbidden to set up her abode nearby, but she had protested little when he had told her. The general had not given that lack of a protest much thought, more concerned with the offer made by his new ally. As far as he was concerned, the witch could now pack her things up and ride off. If she did not, he would likely have to have her slain. Some sort of animosity existed between Zazax and her, and at the moment, Malevolent needed the demon far more than he needed a very mortal sorceress, whatever her other charms. Women could be easily replaced. Moments of immortality generally could not be. By Malevolent's choice, only a single lamp lit the tent. He did not know if the demon cast shadows, but if so, the less chance of one of his men noticing, the better for the general. Had they known what he and the Mantis wished to discuss, they would have all likely fled into the dark desert, heedless of the dangers lurking out there. A flickering movement caught his attention. Augustus Malevolent turned, noticing that one shadow moved in defiance of the lamp's flame. "You're there, aren't you?" he murmured.
"This one has come as promised, O Great One."
The shadow deepened, grew substantial. In moments, the hideous form of the hellish mantis loomed over the human. Yet despite the presence of a creature who looked capable of ripping apart limb by limb, General Malevolent felt only anticipation. In Zazax, he saw the first of many such monsters who would eventually serve him in every way.
Lukolain lies little more than a day from you now, warlord. Have you changed your mind?
Changed his mind about gaining the armor? Changed his mind about his destiny? You waste my time on such useless prattle, Zazax. I am firm in my choice. The bulbous yellow orbs flared. The mantis's head twitched slightly, as if the demon tried to peer through the closed tent flap.
We spoke briefly of the witch, great warlord. This one has considered that matter much since then, and believes still that she must not be part of this. Or perhaps anything else.
Augustus Malevolent pretended to brood over this. She's been of value to me for some time. I'd hate to lose her assets.
She would not agree with what this one has proposed to you, warlord. You might trust this one on that.
The general had not missed Zazax's continual use of the new title, and while he pleased Malevolent to hear it, the demon in no way succeeded in playing to his ego. Malevolent still considered each detail by his own worth, even Galena. What lies between you and her?
An agreement made foolishly, and one this one wishes to break.
Not the most clear of answers, but enough to give the general what he needed. He had a possible bargaining chip. You will give me all I demand? All we discussed?
All, and gladly, warlord.
Then you may have her now if you wish. I will wait here while you do what you must. If the demon could possibly ever look disconcerted, then he did so now.
This one's most graciously declines your kind offer, warlord, and suggests that perhaps you take the honor yourself at some point soon.
The mantis would not, or could not touch Galena, just as Malevolent had expected. Still, to him, the matter seemed moot. It would not change his other decision, not in the least. I will send a detachment to her tent to see that she remains under control. That will at least prevent her from causing any disturbance during her efforts. Perhaps afterwards, I will decide what to do about her. In the meantime, unless there's something else you need to tell me, I would like to begin. The eyes of the demon flashed again, this time in what seemed immense satisfaction. In that voice that reminded the general of a dying swarm of flies, Zazax replied,
Then you will need this, warlord.
In the two skeletal hands, the hellish mantis held a large, twin-bladed dagger made of black metal. A dagger with runes etched not only in the handle, but along the embedded two stones. The larger as red as blood, the other as pale as blown. Both stones had a slight gleam to them that came from no outside source.
Take it.
Augustus Malevolent did so with eagerness, hefting the massive knife and noting its fine balance. What must I do with it?
Prick the skin, let a few drops of blood flow.
The mantis cocked his head.
A simple matter.
Dagger in hand, the general hurried to the flap of the tent. He shouted for one of his officers, then glanced over his shoulder at Zazax. You'd better fade back into. But the demon had already anticipated his request, Zazax melting once more into the shadow. A thin mustache shoulder with silver tabs on his shoulders appeared out of the darkness. He rushed up to the tent and saluted his commander. Yes, General? Zeko, one of his more competent aides. Malevolent would miss him, but the potential glories outweighed any concern for a single person. The witch is to be placed under protective arrest. She is not to be allowed to touch any of her belongings, nor is she even so much as to raise a finger until I say so. A grim smile crossed the other soldier's face. Like most of Malevolent's officer, Zeko had no love for his sorceress, who had, up until now, influenced their leader so much. Aye, General, I'll do what I can. All right? Something occurred to the commander. But first, bring the guards chosen for this task here. Be quick about it. With a swift salute, Zeko vanished into the dark, only to return a short time later with 4 sturdy-looking warriors. Zeko ushered them into Malevolent's tent, then took up his place at the forefront. All present, General, he called out, snapping to attention. Very good. Malevolent gave the small troop a brief inspection, then faced them. You have all served me loyally, time and time again. His fingers stroked the hilt of the dagger, to which none of his 5 had so far paid much attention. You have sworn your lives to me more than once, and for that, I thank you. However, with such a prize as the one awaiting us, I must ask of you all to show your willingness to serve me until death. To one side, General Malevolent noticed a shadow move. Zazax no doubt grew impatient, not understanding the need for the short speech. These men would be the first, therefore from them would spread word of why their leader now demanded this new proof from them. Tomorrow begins a day of glory, a day of destiny, and each of you shall play an integral part. I ask now, my friends, that you verify your faith in you, in hopes in you, with this one last oath. He held up the dagger for all them to see. A couple of the guards blinked, but no one otherwise reacted. Zeko, I give you the honor of being the first. Show me your bravery. Without hesitation, the mustached officer stepped up and thrust out his ungloved hand. This had not been the first time he had sworn a blood oath to his commander, and of the 5, only he no doubt thought that he understood why Malevolent desired to re-emphasize to the men the loyalty they owed the general. Palm up. After Zeko had obeyed, Malevolent held the dagger point down over the fleshiest part, then jabbed his officer's palm. Zeko stifled a gasp, the man keeping his eyes straight ahead as he had been expected of him. Because of that, he did not notice something strange about both the knife and where it had punctured his skin. The 2 gems in the hilt briefly flashed the moment the points pierced his hand. More curious, although blood flowed from the tiny wounds, little of it actually spread over the palm, most of it seeming drawn toward the black blade, where it then disappeared. Have yourself a sip of wine, Zeko, Malevolent offered, pulling back the dagger. As his aide stepped away, the general signaled to the next man, upon he repeated the same process. After all 5 had been bled, Augustus Malevolent saluted them. You have given me your lives. I promise to treat them as valuable gifts. They are. You are dismissed. As the soldiers departed, he called to Zeko. Before you deal with the witch, have Captain Lyconius bring every man under his command to my tent, will you? Aye, General. When the others had gone, the voice of Zazax drifted from the shadows.
This goes too slow, Warlord. It will take days at this rate.
No. Now it will go much faster. These 5 have been given an honor, so they see it. Zeko will tell Lyconis, and he in turn will tell his men, and so on. I will order the officers to give a ration of drink to each soldier who shows them he has once more sworn his life to my cause. The pace will quicken incredibly, I promise you. A few seconds later, Lyconius, a thin, fair-haired man older than the general, asked to be admitted. Outside, every soldier under his command awaited. Malevolent bled the captive first, then had him line the men up. The mention of a ration of drink afterward made each fighter all the more eager to be there. However, only a few of Lyconis' men that had been dealt with when Zeko, looking much more perturbed, burst into the tent. He knelt on one knee before the commander, head down in shame. Somewhat irritated at this costly interruption, General Malevolent barked, "Speak! What is it?"
General! The witch! She's nowhere to be found.
Malevolent tried to conceal his annoyance. Her belongings, are they still in the tent? Aye, General, but her horse is missing. Even Galena would not ride out into the vast desert at night. Taking a casual glance over his shoulder, Malevolent noticed the shadow of the demon shift. No doubt Zazax did not find this news pleasant either, but at the moment neither man nor demon could afford to waste time on her. If the sorcerers had somehow learned of their intention and had chosen to flee, it truly mattered little in the long run to her former lover. What harm could she do? Perhaps once he wore the armor he would hunt her down, but now Malevolent had more important concerns. Never mind her, Zako. Return to your normal duties. Relief in his voice, the aide thanked him, then hurried from the tent. General Malevolent turned back to his task, bleeding the next man, then commending him for his bravery. The pace did indeed quicken, just as he had told the mantis it would. The combination of honor and drink caused a line to spread throughout the entire encampment, each man anxious to prove his worth to his master and fellows. Tomorrow they felt the general would lead them to a glorious victory and riches beyond their wildest dreams. Though they might be too few to take the stronghold such as Luke Lane did not occur to them. General Malevolent would not have made the same decision, so they assumed that he did already have some battle plan ensuring success. And deep into the night, the last man proved his loyalty hand out, the dagger already pricking his palm. The final soldier and the officer who had guided him and both departed after saluting their trusted leader. From without, Augustus Malevolent could already hear the sounds of celebration as each of his men savored their ration of drink and toasted their future good fortunes.
It is done,
Rasped Zazax, emerging from the shadowy corners, each
and every one that's tasted the dagger's bite, and each and every one the dagger has sipped.
Turning the ceremonial weapon over and over in his hands, the general commented, "Not a single drop, not the tiniest stain. Where did all the blood go?"
Each to its own, warlord. Each to the one it must go. This one promised you an army against whom even Luke Lane could not defend long. Remember?
I recall. He touched the helmet, which he had not taken off once since camp had been made. It seemed so much a part of him now that he swore it would never leave his side, that he would only remove it for necessity's sake. And I say again, I accept the consequences of our deal. The mantis's body dipped in what might have been an acknowledging bow.
Then there is no reason not to proceed immediately.
Tell me what must be done.
In the sand at your feet, you must draw this symbol.
Using one of the skeletal hands, Zazax traced the mark in the air. The general's eyes widening slightly as the demon's gaunt figure left a fiery orange trail behind, highlighting the symbol. Why don't you just do it?
It must be done by he who will command. Would you prefer it to be this humble one, warlord?
Seeing Zazax's point, Malevolent bent down and drew the mark as it appeared in the air. To his surprise, as he completed it, strange words suddenly burst from his lips.
Do not hesitate,
urged the mantis eagerly.
The words were known to him, and they will be known to you.
his words. Bartok's words. Augustus Malevolent let them flow, savoring the power he felt from their use.
Hold the dagger over the center.
When the general had done that, the demon added,
Now speak the name of my infernal lord. Speak the name of Belial.
Belial? Who is Belial? I know of Baal and Mephisto and Diablo, but not of this Belial. Do you mean
Speak not that name again.
Zazax nervously chittered. The mantis twisted his horrific head left and right as if feared discovery by someone. Evidently finding nothing upon which to base that fear, the demon finally responded in calmer tones.
There is no master in hell save Belial. It is he who offers you this wondrous gift. Recall that always.
More familiar with the magic arts than the mantis might think him, Malevolent knew that hell had once been described as being ruled by the three prime evils. Yet, he also knew of legends which had told of the three brothers cast up onto the mortal plane, the rule of hell a thing of the past. In fact, one of the more obscure legends mentioned Luco Lane as the possible location of Baal's tomb, although even the general doubted the veracity of such a fantastic tale. Who would build a city on top of a demon lord's tomb?
As you say, Zazax.
Belial, it is. I simply wanted to get the name correct.
Begin again.
The monstrous insect snapped. Once more the words spilled from Malevolent's tongue. Once more he held the vampiric dagger high above the center of the symbol. Belial's symbol, the general now realized. At the end of the incantation, the eager commander called out the demon lord's name.
Plunge a dagger into the center exactly.
General Malevolent drove the twin-tipped blade deep into the sand, clutching the center of the image perfectly. Nothing happened. He looked up at the looming horror.
Step back,
Zazax suggested. And as the would-be conqueror did, a grim black haze arose around the dagger. While the two watched, the haze rapidly grew, first expanding above the weapon, then finally spreading toward the 10th lap. As it drifted outside with what seemed definite purpose, till Malevolent's trained eye, the foreboding haze took on the shape of what seemed to be a huge, clawed hand.
It will not be long now, Warlord.
Unconcerned, Malevolent sought out a goblet of his finest wine. For this night, he chose a new bottle, one that had been packed carefully for countless journeys over desperate landscapes. The general opened it, sniffed the contents, and with what seemed much approval, poured himself a full cup. At that point, the first of the screams began. Augustus Malevolent's hand shook at the sound, but not because of any fear or regret. It was just that he had never heard such a soul-tearing cry, not even from those he had tortured, and the suddenness of it had simply startled the hardened veteran. When the second, the third, and fourth arose, Malevolent found them not at all disconcerting. He even raised his goblet toward the half-buried dagger and Zazax's unseen lord. As he did, the shrieks outside became a chorus of damned scores of men crying out at the same time, pleading for some escape. From all around the camp, the agonized screams assaulted the general, but he took each in stride. The men, his men, had each sworn more and more than one oath that they would serve him in all things, in all ways. Tonight, he had taken that oath to heart. Accepting their sacrifices, quite literally, for the better of his quest, he turned toward the tent flap again. Mistaking the human's reaction, the mantis warned,
"It is too late to save them. The pact has been accepted by this one's infernal lord."
"Save them? I merely wish to toast them for what they have given in order to garner me my destiny."
"Ah!"
responded the demon, clearly seeing the true General Malevolent for the first time.
"This one is mistaken."
And on went the screams. A few sounded quite distant, as if some of the men had tried to flee, but they could not flee from something eating away at them from within their very souls. Some, obviously very loyal, called out to their commander, pleading for help. Malevolent poured himself another goblet, then sat down to wait for the finish. Gradually, the last of the screams died down, leaving only the nervous whinnying of the horses, who could not understand what had happened. That, too, though, ceased, as the heavy silence of the camp affected them as well. The sudden clank of metal against metal made him look at the demon again, but Zazak said nothing. Outside, the clanking increased, growing both in intensity and nearness. General Malevolent finished the last of his wine and stood up. The noise outside abruptly stopped.
"They await you, warlord."
Adjusting his armor, especially his helmet, General Augustus Malevolent stepped outside. They did indeed wait for him, their ranks perfect. Several held torches, so he could see their faces, the faces he had come to know so well over their years of service to them. They all stood there, Zako, Laconius, and the rest of the officers, each with their men behind them. As they stepped into their sight, a cry of salute rose up among the throng, a cry monstrous, brutal in its tone. It made Malevolent smile, just as a somewhat closer glance at the foremost visages further enthused the commander. No matter how dark or light their skins had been before, they now had pale, pasty look to them. As for their mouths, their battle cry had revealed teeth now fanged, and tongues long and forked. Their eyes were completely red and burned with such an evil desire that they could be seen even without the aid of a torch. They were not human eyes, but rather eyes that, at least in malevolence, more resembled those of the mantis. Garbed in the very husks of those loyal soldiers, these horrific warriors would be his new legion, his path to glory. Zazax joined him outside the tent. The hellish mantis, no longer needing to be concerned about secrecy. After all, here he stood among his own.
"All hail Malevolent of Westmarch!
Zazax called out.
All hail the warlord of blood!
And once again, the demonic horde cheered Augustus Malevolent. So far from the encampment, Glenn had heard nothing but the witch did since the striking of the sinister spell. Long associated with the darker aspects of her art, she knew that such incredible emanations of hellish sorcery could only mean that her fears had come to fruition. She had been right to depart when she had, or else the enchantress would have certainly joined the fates of Augustus' unsuspecting warriors. Zazax had underestimated her for the last time. The Mantis would have used others to deal with her in order to break the blood pact that they had made some years back. He had chosen the general for his new ally, the demon having always hinted that a new warlord would be of more interest than simply gaining empty armor. Galena should have realized months ago that he had never intended to continue with their own alliance any longer than necessary. Yet, what had made him so suddenly choose Augustus over her? Could it really have been fear? Ever since that night when the monstrous insect had nearly done the unthinkable, slaying her outright despite the repercussions of directly breaking their blood pact, the witch had tried to think of what could so disturb a creature of hell. What fear had sent him scurrying straight to Malevolent? In the end, it did not matter. Both Zazax and Augustus could have one another for all she cared. After what she had discovered during her brief spell work earlier, Galena had decided that she, in turn, needed neither the two treacherous creatures. Why settle for always looking over her shoulder when she could be the one who truly commanded? The sorceress glanced down at her hand as she rode, not the first time she had done so. In her left palm, Galena held a small crystal, which, through spells she had tried to intend destination. So long as the crystal glowed, the enchantress knew that she remained on the right track. So long as it glowed, she knew that she could find the fool she intended to make her puppet. In betraying her, Zazax had made one terrible error in judgment. For some reason that she could not yet fathom, the demon could not by himself detect the ancient warlord's armor. He needed human assistance, which had been one of the foremost reasons the two of them had first joined together. That had been why, when he had believed that he knew where the prize lay, the cursed mantis had abandoned her for a general Malevolent. It should not have been at all surprising to her, since Galena had considered doing much the same. But for Zazac, the error would prove a costly one. The demon no doubt believed that the armor could be found now in nearby Luca Lane, the location that they had last determined it would head toward. Even she had assumed that much until her last spell. Where else could it be but within the coastal kingdom? A lone traveler either needed to find a caravan there willing to take him on, or wait instead for a ship heading on from Luca Lane to one of the more western lands. Either way, Nork should have been within the city walls. But he was not. At some point, he had left, choosing to forego sanity and apparently ride out into the desert at the pace that surely had killed his mount. When Galena had discovered his new location, it had stunned her. The veteran fighter practically stood under Augustus's very nose. If the general had agreed to letting her cast a search spell when she had originally offered, the armor might very well now be his. He could have already been approaching Luca Lane, clad in the crimson garb of Bartek. his loyal witch at his side. Instead, Galena now hoped to convince this other fool that he should use it. Under her masterful guidance, of course. He looked to be a manageable sort of elf, one she readily be able to wrap around her finger. He also had a not unreasonable countenance, one in some ways the witch preferred to her former lover. That would make the task of maintaining control of her new puppet not so great a chore. Of course, if Galena found some better method by which to harness the astonishing power of the enchantments, it would also not bother her much if she had to do away with this Knaak. There were always other men, other fools. On and on she rode, her only concern that Zazax might choose to interrupt his activities with Augustus to pursue his former partner. Of course, that would go against their pact too, which would endanger the demon as well as her. More likely, the hellish mantis would forget her for now, satisfied that he had his grand prize. Later, he would no doubt find a means by which to sever their ties, not to mention her head and limbs. He would be too late, though. Once she had her pawn ensnared, Galena would see to it that Zazax, not she, would lay scattered over the landscape. Perhaps she would even have Knaak bring the insect's head to her, a pretty trophy with which to begin to rebuild the collection that the sorcerer had been forced to leave abandoned tonight. She peered around, looking for some sign of her prey. In order to lessen the risk of riding around nearly blind because of the darkness, the witch had cast a spell enhancing both the vision of her horse and herself. It enabled the animal to pick a path that would avoid accidents and predators while giving Galena the ability to better hunt for the soldier. There. Reining her mount to a halt, the sorceress stared at the distant, shadowed form on a rocky hill. The crystal indicated that her path continued directly that way. Galena rose in the saddle for a moment, searching for any other likely spot and finding none. As a seasoned warrior, the fool certainly had enough sense to look for a reasonable shelter, and the small hill before her looked to be the only such choice for many miles around. He had to be there. Eager now, Galena urged the horse on. As they neared, she thought she saw a figure just to the left of the hill. Yes, most definitely a man, seated under an outcropping, his knees drawn up to his chest, his arms resting atop his knees. He jumped as the witch approached, for one clad in heavy armor, his agility and speed surprising her. Galena could see him peering back, trying to make her out in the darkness, and so far failing. No, not an unpleasant face at all. The godful sorceress thought. Better than she had recalled from their encounter on the ship. If he would just prove himself to be reasonable, to listen to her, then they would have no troubles with one another, and she would have soon to begin the search for the eventual replacement. "Who is it?" Knaak called. "Who are you?" She dismounted a short distance from him. "Only a fellow wanderer. No one who means you harm." No, Galena simply used the crystal to illuminate the area. Let him see the good fortune that had just stepped into his miserable little life. "Someone looking for some warmth?" The witch manipulated the gleaming stone, letting its light cross both her face and torso. She saw his interest immediately. So much the better. He looked to be one readily led around by the nose in return for a few readily given pleasures. The perfect dupe. His expression suddenly changed, and not for the better. I know you, don't I? He approached, towering over her. I need to see your face again. Of course. Galena held the crystal nearer to her features. Not enough light. I need more. He held up his left hand. In the palm of the gauntlet there suddenly formed a tiny fireball that outshone the crystal 100-fold. Galena could not stifle a gasp. She had expected an initiated fool, a fighter with no grasp of sorcery. Instead, he had summoned flame without so much as an effort, something still beyond many well-schooled apprentices. That's better. I do know you. Your face, anyway. On the Hawk's Fire. He nodded in an immense satisfaction. I dreamed of you there. Recovering, Galena quickly replied, and I dreamed of you too that time. Dreamed of a warrior, a champion, who could protect me from the evils pursuing me. As she hoped, her words and tone had an immediate effect on the man. His look of distrust did not completely fade, but now she saw also sympathy and pride that she looked at him as her savior. The witch pressed nearer to Nork, staring adoringly into his eyes with her own half-lidden ones. She surely had him enticed by this point. You're in danger? A protective look crossed his face. He peered beyond Galena, as if already expecting to see the villains who chased after her. They don't know I escaped them just yet. I dreamed of you again last night. Knew that you had to be near waiting for me. Putting a hand on his breastplate, Galena leaned forward but inches between her full lips and his own. He did not rise to the tempting bait, instead considering some other manner. You're a sorceress, Nark finally responded. What's your name? Galena, and I know from my dreams that my knight is called Norik. Yes. The fighter smiled at the title she had given him. Are you a powerful sorceress? The witch let her hand trace the seams on the armor. I have some talent in that, and in other fields as well. I could use a sorceress, he muttered almost to himself. I wanted one to help me deal with this armor. But that's not so important anymore. I've had time to think. Time to put matters in their proper order. There's things I need to do before I go on any further. Galena only half paid attention, already planning ahead. Norik definitely did not sound as simple a man as the enchantress had at first imagined, but he had at least taken her story to heart and accepted her as a companion, if nothing else. As she learned more about him, Galena would strengthen that tie. He had already revealed some weakness to her charms, the rest of what she desired the witch would gain soon enough. Of course, if she could help Norik with whatever concerned him, show her puppet of what valuable assistance she could be, that would shorten her own task. While Galena did not understand his statement concerning the armor itself, these other matters he had mentioned, whatever they might be, she could surely aid him in accomplishing. Of course, I'll help you in any way I can. She turned her gaze briefly to the desert. They're powerful and have dark arts of their own at their command. Galena had wanted to test his reserve to see the extent he felt sure of the power he apparently wielded. Yet even to her surprise, Nork shrugged, then almost casually answered, Warriors? Magic? Demons? I have no fear of them. Those under my protection will come to no harm. You have my gratitude, she whispered, leaning up and kissing him hard. He pulled her away, not out of any disgust, but because he seemed not to have any interest at the moment in what she had offered him. Instead, Nork appeared once more lost in his own other concerns. I've thought about it, the fighter finally told the witch. Thought about why I ended up here of all places. It has to be somewhere near. It tries to keep hidden from me. He looked down at her again, something in his eyes suddenly unnerving Glenn a little bit. But you might be able to find it. You found me after all. You could probably succeed where Drogden had failed. I'll do what I can. The dark-skinned enchantress returned, curious as what demanded the man's attention. Something of value to her, too, perhaps. What are we looking for? His expression indicated that he found it surprising that she did not already know. Horizon's tomb, of course. Something in his face changed as he spoke, something that made Galena look at him again, and this time see a face that she did not entirely recognize. My brother's tomb.